Okay, so good evening, everyone. For all those who have joined and also for those who are joining in. See, I will introduce, Brother Prakash, who has joined us from Chennai, India. It's very early in the morning at 5:30 for him, but he has kindly agreed to be with us. Um, Quickly to give a brief introduction about him and also the need that I felt for having this meeting. I will try to cover that. See, there is a word in English, it's called as polymath. Polymath means a person who generally is very knowledgeable on different subjects. So you give him anything, the person will be able to cover. That is the kind of feeling I generally have when it comes to, Brother Prakash. He is very elder to me, so I call him brother, but it makes me cringe a little bit. He's very elder to me. See, I have seen him talk on various topics, whether it is with respect to management or whether it is with respect to MSME or whether it is with the economy. He can talk on various subjects in a lot of detail. At the same time, if it is something to do with spirituality also, he has a lot of depth. Many things, like, if we spend time with him, he will share a lot of things. I have personally got benefited from the association that I've had with him. See, he is basically a co-founder of a organization called Sea Change Consulting. And so he does a lot of work in turning around different organizations who are actually at the at the lower area of the efficiency. He brings them up with respect to their productivity, finances and everything. So that is pretty much his one side of, Brother Prakash. The other side, from spirituality standpoint, he has spent more than around 29, 30 years, I think, right now in, heartfulness. He started with the third master, Charyaji Maharaj. And ever since, he has been very closely associated with him. So he has quite a lot of experiences from the personal interactions with, the third guide of heartfulness. So personally, when he shares, quite a lot of, interactions that are very knowledgeable for us. And he is currently also serving as the, secretary of the Indian mission for the current incarnate master, Daji. So that is his background. He is also the regional coordinator in Tamil Nadu zone. So basically, Tamil Nadu is one state in India for those who don't know. And there are several zones within Tamil Nadu, and there are several, preceptors, who he actually mentors. And also, like, there are several seekers, who join over there. And they somehow have a big organization to make sure that they're able to maintain that momentum. There is a quite a tremendous amount of growth, that they are able to show in heartfulness in Tamil Nadu. See, one interesting thing I will share with you. Once, like, what actually happened was when I stepped into this role as a regional head here in Canada, I met him, and then I requested him to help me out, requested him to mentor me in this particular role. So he gave me my first assignment of coming up with a vision for what I have for Canada. And it took me 4 days because, like, every time I went back, he will send me back with a different, idea. So a very deep person, but he's a great mentor to learn and grow. The other incident that I remember is I was very stretched and exhausted one day. And this is something I want all of us to hear and know about the depth of heartfulness. One day I was very stretched and exhausted, and it happens because, like, day job, we work for the family, material life, all those things are there. And then evening time and then early morning hours, we devote to our personal practice, and also we connect with seekers and we give sittings and everything. So it is natural that sometimes we get very exhausted as the week progresses. So one day when I was actually talking to him, he actually asked me, like, what's going on? And I told him I'm very exhausted. So he said, okay, sit, I will give you a sitting. Right after the sitting, I felt so very energized completely. And then he also taught me the technique of what to do as well. The reason I'm actually sharing this one is in heartfulness, there is a lot of depth. So many techniques are there. There is a lot of depth. When we have a proper mentor, they can actually teach us how to go about things. And, it actually shapes us and helps us evolve as a person. Now, the reason I actually have this session arranged for is, I heard one of his talks to the volunteers and the seekers over there, and I felt very, very moved by the particular talk. And I seriously felt like it will benefit anybody, who hears that particular talk that he gave for the preceptors over there, and the separately, like even for the volunteers also over there. So that is the reason why we chose to have this particular meeting. And in this meeting, he is going to talk about habits and life success. That's what he's going to cover. The intention is the session will go for about an hour, 8 to 9. And then at 9 p.m., he has graciously agreed to give all of us a sitting. Generally, whenever I have taken a sitting from him, each time the experience has been very different. And I have learned a lot out of each of those sittings from the experiences, whatever I have felt. I'm sure each one of you also will, have a unique experience, and you will have something to enjoy. So that is with respect to the introduction that I would like to give for both the reason for this particular session and also about Brother Prakash. So welcome, Brother Prakash. I know it's very early in the morning for you, and also I feel very moved for all the help that you have given to me, and also especially to meet every one of us over here in this part of the world. And this day also supposed to be, a great occasion for two reasons. One is it is still his birthday on the Canadian side, although like it is 15th August for him there. His birthday hasn't finished over here, so he has that extra bit of opportunity to continue the birthday time with us. And then the other thing is it is also the Mahasamadhi of the first teacher of heartfulness, Lalaji. So it's a very auspicious occasion as well. So for on both these occasions coming together, it is very nice to have this extended session on a Sunday with Prakash plus along with the sitting. So thank you very much, brother, and I will let this be open for you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm still looking for the worms. If you understand what it means, they say, the early bird gets the worms. Still quite early in the morning here. And thank you for the nice introduction, Vishwa. I just thought of sharing a joke, maybe, or rather a story. Once a student was asked to write an essay on a topic of his choice. The student loved cows, so he said cows actually eat grass, they give milk and things like that. The teacher thought, it's maybe I have to make the student to write on some other topic. He said, why don't you write about your travel in a bus? I said, fine, I'll write. And then he takes a sheet of paper and then writes saying that I was traveling in a bus I was seated on the left side of the bus, and outside I saw a huge lawn, and in that lawn there was a cow, and the cow was eating grass, and the grass led to the cow giving the milk. The teacher said, no, I had to really make him think different. He said, okay, now think of going by a flight and then share us essay on that. So I went to the airport, I boarded a flight. When I boarded the flight went to about 30,000 feet. From the side of the aircraft, I looked down. There was a field, and in the field, there was a cow, and the cow was eating the grass. If we get to the story, it's like that the polymath that Vishwa was referring to. Whatever you start, finally, I bring it back to heartfulness. The only polymath I know is heartfulness, and from there is what everything seems to come. When you speak about success, there's a very interesting anecdote or a story I want to start with. There's once this rich man who's an immigrant who comes to a place like Canada. And after several years, people want to chronicle his success history. So he gets interviewed by a famous channel, and they put him there and ask him, please share the success behind the story behind the success that you have. And he says I was about 23 years old. I came to this country. as an immigrant. And what did you do to become so rich? You are, you can't even count the wealth that you have. It's first week, my mom had given me about 10 cents. I went to a shop, bought vegetables, and went about vending it. At the end of the week, the 10 cents became 12 cents. Okay, after that, I put the 12 cents back and worked hard and worked hard. And after 1 week, it became 15 cents. Oh, wonderful, sir. After that, said I put that 15 cents again and went around, went around. At the end of third week, it became 20 cents. Sir, can you just say how it became the billions of dollars that you have? It's quite simple. At the end of the third week, I found this girl who was born to a rich man, loved her, and got married, and that's how I became rich. So for many people, success comes in several ways, and success, if measured only as wealth, has its own way of panning out in our lives. So the first thing that we have to, I mean, this is something that is sort of what we call as an MDQ or a $1 million question. The definition of success is always eluding, seems to always be out of our grasp as the concept of moving goals that exist even in Sahaj mindfulness. So first we have to get into this topic of habits and success, life success. We need to understand what actually success means to us. I've read several definitions and I continue to be fascinated by this topic. It's something that everyone wants to understand and ace in their lives, whether you are in material path, spiritual path, or so-called balanced path. So if I have to ask you the question, take a moment for yourself. I'll give a pause for you to think. You don't need to share it, but what really is success to you? Think about it. If you have a paper, you can write. I will not ask you to share so that I don't need to make you feel embarrassed in case the definitions are different from one another. But if you're able to pause and reflect for a minute. I don't know what your answers are. I don't want you to read, but at least you can reflect. Is it bordering on material wealth, or is it bordering on relationships? Is it bordering on spiritual conquest? Whatever it may be, success is normally seen in two ways, either as a output or as a outcome. Outputs and outcomes are a bit different. Let's understand that first for us to understand and go back to what success can be. Success, like the fingerprints on the hand, is almost different for each human being, though many people tend to weigh it down to the wealth that they have, the material wealth. Okay, let's look at these two terms in terms of outputs and outcomes. A typical output is what we call as the numbers that you generate. In corporate parlance, you can call it as, say, for example, I have so many thousands or millions of dollars in my bank account, and it becoming 1.5x, 2x, 3x, whatever of that movement output based on the efforts that I put in is what we call as an output, which is normally measurable. In goal setting parlance, we also call it as ambition. Ambition, one strategy defined as something that you want to keep on acquiring. It's something that I want. I want a car, I want a home, I want a good bank balance, I want a graduation in this discipline, I want to become a better designated executive in my organization, things like that. Typically, they are all things that you keep on acquiring, either based on your needs or wants or desires. But when you look at the outcome, let me put it this way: if you are, say, Usain Bolt, getting a medal may be an output that you sort of get. The money that goes with that can be an output. But outcome typically is measured in terms of the impact that you create for yourself and for others. If you look at Usain Bolt after 15, 20 years of what he has done and he has now retired, the legacy that he has left behind as a sprinting legend of the last century, or even partly of this century, it's an outcome. If you really equate that to the goal setting process, we call it as something what we call as aspirational. Aspirational, what Sharji once said, is all about becoming, whereas ambition is about acquiring. For example, I might want to be maybe the five best thought leaders in Canada in the next 5, 10 years, something like that. For example, some of you may be in certain professions and then you want to leave an imprint where you are spoken about much, much after you're gone, long gone, dead, buried, whichever way. If you look at the story of Alfred Nobel, many of you might be knowing that he is also uh, known for the riches that he amassed by selling dynamite. Once upon a time, it so happened that when he was still in his 40s or so, by mistake, the message went around that he was dead, and an obituary was printed while he was still alive. And the magazine or the daily which printed the obituary had written a little tarnished his image, saying that it's better that this person is dead and gone than being alive, because the kind of destruction he has caused in this world because of the sale of dynamite and the wars that he has instigated for his dynamite to sell, it's what that he doesn't exist in this world. And it so happened that landed on the lap of Alfred Nobel, and he was really shocked. He was angry initially, and then he was shocked, and he called for this person who had written that piece. And when he happened to meet, he said, "Why did you write this?" "Sir, I'm sorry for writing this. I didn't know you were alive, but whatever said and done, this is what you are. You have made money, but imagine the kind of destruction that you have left behind in this world and you continue to live." That apparently in that moment was a turning point in the life of Alfred Nobel. And that's when he decided to set that Nobel Foundation, through which even today, after several, maybe 100 years plus since he's gone, people are still talking about him more in a reverential way. How many would know the other side of the story? He moved from being ambitious to aspirational in that moment. That kind of a eureka moment happens to many of us, maybe when we are quite young or maybe at a later age. But till that shift happens in one way or another, life is really not complete. Otherwise, what you are is nothing but the amount of money that you have made or the wealth that you have acquired. No harm in that. But if you really look at the time when it comes, you pass on. In your tombstone, they will just put the year of birth and the year of death, and they'll just put a hyphen in between. And this hyphen many times is the life that we have lived for 60, 70, 80, 90 years, but finally is expressed as one single hyphen. When people, after long after time we are gone, what would you be remembered for? So if you come back to that topic that we are here to discuss, uh, habits and life success, what exactly is success that you have defined it to be? Is it ambitious? Is it aspirational? Is it based on output? Is it based on outcome? Or is it a combination of both? Whatever be it, it's something that should add meaning to life. Once I remember reading almost 17, 18 years ago, a wonderful definition of success in a book that I was reading. And in that book, the author had defined success in a beautiful way. He just wrote that success is when I can live the life the way it should be. It's a beautiful statement because the way the life should be is different from the way the life I would want it to be. And finding the difference between the want and the should is where the real journey begins. We all know what we want, and predominantly these desires, whether material or spiritual. So even in spirituality, you can have desires of moving in points. I'm in so and so point. I want to move to this point. I'm in so and so region. I want to move to this region. Things like that. Or I'm holding this volunteer post and I want to become better and maybe head a state or head a country, or why not much more, things like that. So ambition is not restricted to only material life. It can be even in spiritual life. So if there is a definition that you have in terms of what your life should be, what would that be? If you haven't yet found it out, if you can find it in this session, you would have made significant progress on several fronts in your life. It's just not about a spiritual meeting that we have. It is about a meeting about life. And we can't differentiate between the two. There is no separate spiritual being and a material being that we have. Once Daji beautifully was explaining about the concept of the balanced existence, and he said people are only worried about balancing the two wings of one side the material and the other side spiritual. They need to understand that both have to work in unison, where both become an extension of another, and they're able to rise above and fly towards something that they've chosen to. So it is just not about fluttering in the air, mid-air, all the time looking how am I going to balance my left and right, my material and spiritual and things like that. So if you are able to find it out, in my view, I found it long, long ago, maybe at the age of 38, 39. Though I won't explain what it is, but after that, my life became one of joyous existence. And whatever we are going to speak about in the rest of the session about aligning the success with habits will revolve around what I have over a period of time found for myself. Because whenever I find people, whether successful or not, one thing that I always hear from all of them is that I don't have time. Like what even Vishwa was talking about a little bit ago before the session officially started. He said, I didn't have time to check on this. I didn't have time to check on that. I don't have time to check on something or do something is one of the most shallow excuses we can give to life. I mean, it's not about any specific person. This is a challenge that the entire world seems to have today. You catch even a 5-year-old boy, he says, I don't have time to do the homework because I'm busy playing. You ask someone who is 10 years old, he will have a different view, and a 25-year-old. And I have met people, I continue to meet people as part of my corporate work that I do. People who are extremely successful in their own definition, extremely rich, extremely wealthy. When you talk to them, you always still find that they don't have time. Time for what? They don't have time. I should have spent some time with my daughter when she went to that Parents Teachers Association meeting or that annual get together or whatever situation, or there was a wedding in my family, but I couldn't actually make it because I was busy signing some contract overseas, making some additional millions, things like that. So if you really look at it, managing time, managing success, and managing habits are 3 points in an equilateral triangle that you have to continuously balance. If you are not balancing, the equilateral triangle loses its balance and it becomes a different sized one. And the key is to balance all these three and use it to grow. An equilateral triangle, if you really look at it, can be of different dimensions. It can be small, it can be medium, it can be large, it can be extra large, it can be super large, and it can be the size of the universe as well. An equilateral triangle, if you had done math in school, what is inside is called as the area of the equilateral triangle. And that is something that can keep growing. And when it keeps growing, your life is supposed to be more impactful, provided they are balanced on these three pillars, what I spoke about, the success, the habits, and the time that you're able to balance together. If you're only running after success and if you're unable to balance, say, the time and the habits that form your path towards the success, what is the point? You would have been an exhausted soul at the end of your life, really not knowing. I have met several people who are 70, 80 plus. I continue to meet. Many of them, their life is full of regrets. I always ask this question, which I raised in one of the forums last week. If you had a choice to rewind your life and how you would live it all over again, the kind of answers which came were so different. I mean, each one had something that they've forgotten to do or they could have done better. Recently, about a month back, I was reading an article which was forwarded through our most favorite social handle, WhatsApp. It was said that at the time of death, irrespective of the life that you have lived. Uh, in about it's the article was scientific, right? It's just not a management article. They had done research over 20 to 25 years of people who are terminally ill and considered to be dying. And apparently, all these people who had been, whose life towards the end had been captured and chronicled, they all had one thing in common. They said that somehow they sensed when death is going to come. And at the time of death, and some of them, these data were captured from people who came back. So you may be wondering, how is it possible that people who died, the data was captured? These data were captured from people who came back, who didn't die, but they had what they call as NDE or near-death experience. These people, all of them, they invariably said that in about a minute or two, my entire life ran like it was like running at 500 kilometers per hour, right from the time of my birth till the current time. I was able to see the entire life in that one single moment of 1 or 2 minutes. And many of them did not have very pleasant things to say about what they lived through. And they all said that we would have lived the life differently. So, which means that understanding, Charity always used to say the highest wisdom is to learn from others' experience. It takes a lot of time for us to make our own original mistakes. And by the time we make the mistakes and learn from them, you would have lost a lot of time. I always remember this famous joke about a very successful person who went to a college and he was addressing the college students. And people asked, what is the one thing that you would like to share with us? Learning from others' mistakes is what he said. And a student mocked at him, saying, "Sir, what is the point in learning mistakes, learning from others' mistakes?" Then he shared his life story. He said, "I was like you 20, 25 years back, and at the time, some elderly person came and advised me that, learn from others' mistakes so that you can save time. I didn't really care for him and spent 20, 25 years in doing all the mistakes that I can on my own, paid the price. I'm about 45 now. I now understand that it's better to learn from others' mistakes. But when I tell you that you wouldn't really listen, you would want to go ahead and make your own mistakes. Likewise, we all continue to do after the session is over, dusted, and you hit your bed, and you're going to have a busy day ahead tomorrow, being a Monday. You may be wondering about your priorities for tomorrow. How am I going to attend work? What am I going to achieve? How am I going to satisfy client requirements or my family needs or whatever? And this is completely forgotten that in another 5, 10, 20 years from now, we'll be history. We will not be there. Maybe much longer, much shorter, we don't know. That is the funny thing in life. As one of the stories in Mahabharata goes, if you have read that famous epic from India, where Yudhishthir, one of the first Pandavas, is about to sort of face the most testing time of his life. He has just lost his four brothers, uh, where the brothers went and breached a pond which was being held by an Ashwini. Ashwini is like one of those godly angels, you can say. And they went against his advice and they all died. And now Yudhishthira is being put to the test where he's being asked several questions. And the final question is called as Yudhishthir Prashan. And he is being asked, what is the strangest thing in the world? And if you give answer to this also right, I will give back one boon for you. And the question that is asked of Yudhishthir is, what is the strangest thing? And then Yudhishthir answers, which even today is something that we can learn from. He says, the strangest thing, oh my Lord, is that we see people dying around us all the time, but we think that we are immortal and we are going to live forever. And Ashwini, the angel, is happy and he gives him some boon. And it's a different story. You can look it up, Yudhishthir Prashan in Google. You'll find this famous story which has a lot of philosophical bend and it forms the basis of many life learning for many of us. Coming back to what I wanted to say, if we are very clear, at least by the end of this session, what is my success? What is the definition of my success? Is it ambitious? Is it aspirational? Am I here to just acquire for myself and go on piling up my wealth or solving my day-to-day material issues? Or am I going to do something which is going to leave a legacy for the betterment of the world? As the famous English poet or English writer once said, I don't know if it was Bertrand Russell or somebody else, who said that if not the same, if not better, at least leave the earth the same as you found, as you came in. This is one of Charity's famous quote as well. Said every spiritual aspirant specifically has this, I would say, a moral responsibility that we understand that whatever is happening in the world, as Daji mentioned in one of his videos 3 months back, boils down to the thought pollution. And the thought pollution, if not regulated, is what causes much of the other issues. When your thoughts are polluting yourself and polluting the world around you, you are not making it a better place for sure. When I say thought pollution, I am speaking specifically about lower levels of thinking. If you are capable of thinking and if you're capable of thinking better, why restrict it to only negativities and only about acquiring wealth and only about beautifying yourself, only about looking good, only about driving better cars? All that, there is no harm. It is always said in management science that when you run after outcome goals, output goals become incidental. I mean, 20 years from now, if you decide that maybe I want to be the most celebrated thinker in the Canadian context, whether in management or in science or in whatever, as you do that, you'll find that automatically the output results keep piling up. An anecdote once Charity shared here is if you're looking to climb Mount Everest, which is about 29,000 feet, and if your goal is set for the highest, in the first 500 to 1,000 feet, you are likely to find the diamonds and sapphires and gold and whatnot. He said beautifully that output goals or wealth is something like that. They are something which are so easily to be found. Once there was a famous businessman, he was about to die, and he was given a choice of carrying one thing of his choice because he had been such a good person. And he wanted to carry about 100 kilos of gold with him, which is what was allowed. And he carries and moves across, and he's met by Saint Peter on the other side. And Saint Peter asked him, "Why have you brought this?" He said, "No, God gave me the permission." So Saint Peter confirms, yes, he has been given the permission. And being a very special person is given a meeting with God. So he goes to meet God, and God says, "Yeah, I remember you asked for a boon, I gave it. Oh, show me what have you brought." And then he shows me this 100 kilo of gold that he brought. He's saying, "Oh, you brought all the way what we use here for road dust." He shows around the road on the side. It's all full of dust and they're all full of gold. And he says, "That's all you brought here." So in the land of the God, whatever we take from here may not be of much value. Dalaji once told Babaji apparently that even the spiritual wealth I give you, you have to leave behind. You can't carry it. The only thing that you carry is that your ability to swim further and further and further. And whatever I share with you in this journey, you have to pass it on to your successor, who in turn has to pass it on to your successor. And in the duality of existence, all that we have here is what we have. And once we move on, we leave all this. In that context, if you relook at the definition of what success is, would you start looking at it differently from today? If it is so, what would we have to do? Looking at the equilateral triangle where I mentioned about the three pillars, one being success, the other being time, the other being habits. If you had to balance these three, how would you look at the rest of your life? Since we don't know, like based on what Yudhishthir said, whether you're going to live till tomorrow morning or for another 1 week or another 10 years or 40 years, God knows how long. That's why Chariji always said that death is the biggest secret of all, which is kept from humanity, because otherwise life will become chaotic. And that is also the beauty, because We can live for one day at a time and we can still live into eternity. It depends on whatever the rest of the life in terms of years we have to live. Okay. Having defined now success, what it means to you, combination of ambition or aspiration or just aspirational. Those aspirational goals can be, I don't know how many of you have a number. If you look up my WhatsApp status, you'll find what I have put there, which is the same for the last 7 years or so. And that is something, if I'm sure Vishwa will be figuring out by now, opening another window, what the status is something, is what my only goal for the rest of my life is, which is what was the turning point at the age of 39, what I mentioned, when I decided to spend the rest of my time in furthering the cause of what the mission stands for. It's not necessarily the goal that everyone has to pursue, but that goal gave me the clarity for the rest of my life, whatever that rest of the life could be. It has been a very long journey after that. And I still don't know what is the balance left, but whatever I'm doing, in my view, is to pursue that goal that I've shared in my WhatsApp status as what success is. In which case, the other two, the points and the pillars, which are what I spoke about, time and habits, became much easier for me to handle. What I share in all my leadership courses is one thing: once your success is very clearly defined, it is a question of now looking at your life to find. See, the success once defined becomes your goal or goals, which you have to pursue for the rest of life with valued and bigger. There's no point in pursuing anything else. If that clarity comes in, as they say that a person who wants to do 100 things get done none. It's better that you stick to one or max say two goals, one material life goal, aspirational or ambition, and one spiritual goal. Like as they say in Maxim 3 of 10 maxims, fix the goal as the highest. Whatever that goal is, Charity's famous statement is always something which goes like this. If you meet 100 people who practice Sajmar and you ask them why you're practicing, you will get 110 different answers. People are not really sure why they are in this system, not because the system is at fault. Their interpretation of what is possible to achieve from the system maybe many times is shallow. Some people look, if you believe in the Indian tradition of birth and rebirth, they want to get moksha or freedom from rebirth. If you're looking at a Western compassionate kind of a mode, you want to become a better human being where you focus on character formation, akhlaq, as what Lalaji Maharaj would call. So finally, based on what your spiritual goal is and what your material goal is, the combination of these two defining what is success for you, then you move to the second point of the equilateral triangle, which I would call as habits, which also in turn manages the third point in the equilateral triangle, which is time. Let's see how briefly. We all have uh, one day at a time to live max. Because by the time you sleep and get up, we don't know whether you're going to get up in this world or get up on the other side of the world. And for some people, the transition happens while the day is still in progress. Lucky are those who have those peaceful transit when they are sleeping. This is said by none other than Chariji Maharaj himself. He once mentioned nothing like passing out peacefully in sleep, and that is something he said is worth without much of suffering towards the end, because humans don't like that phase of life. Coming back to that point, what I was speaking about, one day at a time. We all know that a day has about 24 hours. I don't know how Canada works. At least in India, we have only 24 hours per day. I hope it's the law the same everywhere in the world. I don't think Bill Gates has 25 hours. A poor man on the street has 22 hours. God is kind that he creates an equal opportunity of 24 hours for all. This 24 hours, how we deploy, is what determines your progress, the faster progress towards your goals, what you define as success. As the famous person once mentioned, initially you invest time in making your habits, and the rest of the life, the habits decide what you have to become. And hence, you have to choose wisely the time you invest in habits. And if you have a chance to relook at your habits, how I would look at it, how I looked at it is something like this. In these 24 hours, how much time do I have to spend for sleeping? For some people, 4 hours is sufficient. For some people, 7 hours is sufficient. Based on the different school of thoughts, people will put down their thinking as the right one. But if you look at the Indian yogic science, it says very clearly, even Swami Vivekananda has mentioned it once. If you know how to sleep using the process of yoga nidra, even 1 hour of sleep is sufficient, and that is equivalent to about 5 hours of what we call as a delta level sleep. Considering that there are 4 or 5 levels of sleep, REM or the rapid eye movement being the lowest one, which is where we apparently spend 2 to 3 hours in bed out of about 8 hours that we claim to sleep. The reason why people sometimes need longer time in the bed is because they're spending so much time in the first, second level of sleep where you don't actually sleep. Your body is not getting rest, but you think you're lying down. But the speed at which there have been a lot of sleep research which has been done, including our own Heartfulness Institute. You can look up the internet for all these results. They all say that about 1.5 hours of delta level sleep is what you need. And the purpose of sleep is to get that 1 hour of delta kind of a sleep. Whether you get it in 2 hours or whether you get it in 8 hours is a choice you have to make, which also means habit is just not about what you do when you're awake. Habit is also what you do when you're actually asleep. If you are a preceptor watching this session, you would have surely read and understood how Lalaji Maharaj, Babji Maharaj, Charji Maharaj, and even Daji works even when they are asleep. You would have understood the concept when they let the subtle body out, do the work even when they're asleep, so that the subtle body is continuously working. And there's no limit to the number of subtle bodies they could create, and they could work on as many abhyasis as they chose when they were asleep, which meant that for them, habit is not, many people I've come across, even abhyasis and some senior preceptors, they all think habits are something that we use when we are awake. Habits is what you do when you are alive, is what I would put. It could be a big shift in consciousness for you. Habits is not about what you do when you are awake. It's habits about what you do when you are alive. If you're able to even make good of this, it will bring a completely a big shift in how you think at life itself. If you are able to now go back and find out how should I sleep, how much time do I need to actually sleep to ensure that the rest of the time I am awake in this world, I am able to focus and use it for the two or one or two goals that I'm going to pursue the rest of my life with. You may be wondering then what happens to all the other material level goals. I always say that when you, Daji famously mentioned about a year back or 2 years back, if I remember, he mentioned if you're smart, find that one problem by solving which you solve all problems of existence. Solve that one problem, solving of which solves all the problems of this world once and for all. Is it something that we are capable of doing, even identifying what that core problem is? If you're able to do that, if you're able to find that one goal, achieving which will let you achieve all other goals. When I run a marathon, 1 kilometer gets covered automatically. I don't need to set a goal for 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers. I set a goal to run marathon in a specific time. I maintain my body, I run. Everything else automatically happens. And if I do it well, my bank balance improves, my health improves, and things like that. So going back to the concept of habits, it's all about writing down what my goals are. And if you are really sincere, take a sheet of paper whenever it's possible in the next one day. Write both when I am asleep and when I am awake. How do I invest every 30 minutes of my time? Just first write on the left, say take a column on serial numbers, write in the description, and in the column 3 and 4, write 30-minute slots, 1 to 1:30, 1:30 to 2, 2 to 2, 2:30 a.m., p.m., whatever. And then write in the description column, in that 30 minutes, what did I do? How did I spend my day? And now look at the sheet. Those 30-minute chunks actually are the reflection of how you use time based on the habits that are consuming you. Was I watching TV? Was I reading books? Was I chatting with my friends? Was I doing a work? If I was doing a work, was I doing it efficiently? Or was I investing time in making it do more effectively? I always used to mention in all my leadership sessions, the leadership, effective leadership is when within 2 to 3 months of you ascending to a position, you are able to find 2, 3 people who can do the job for you so that you are free to move up the ladder. Because when you stagnate, you are also making people below you not to move up. Maybe a very tough call, but really doable if you learn the art of empowerment and delegation. Okay, coming back to the question, if I have written this sheet, how do I look at 30-minute chunks every day? And look at those 30 minutes as your habits. Every day, this is what is either consuming your time, eating your time, or helping you to gallop towards the goals that you have. Uh, if these 30 minutes that you're investing is not efficient in going towards the goals that you have, if you're not still clear of the goals, go back, revisit. Are these goals compelling enough? Are these goals, one or two, whatever I'm writing, spiritual material, good enough for the rest of my life? And in that pursuit, am I utilizing the habits that I have? And if you really look at those habits in a most, I would say, I mean, be very, very critical of yourself. Illat, gillat, zillat, we don't need somebody else to find faults with us. We have to be capable of introspecting and say that I need to let go of this. I'm investing too much of time in this specific habit, which has become a habit because I allowed it to balloon into something like this. Earlier, it wasn't there. 10, 20 years back, I was not investing so much time on OTT, movies, or WhatsApp forwards. Till 2011 or 12, WhatsApp didn't even exist. And we all know that the founder was looking for a job in Twitter in 2008. And when WhatsApp became popular, now about 3 to 4 billion people every day wake up in the morning to WhatsApp. And that's half the world population investing time on WhatsApp. Are we using that? WhatsApp is just a placeholder here, nothing specific about WhatsApp. It's about the habits that consume it. Or am I using the time, including the time that I'm actually asleep, in doing work upon myself? Even if you're not the so-called spiritually inclined person, you would know that even when you're asleep, you can unleash your subconscious mind to work for yourself. Some of the greatest mathematical problems have been solved when people went to sleep with a problem with the hope that the solution will be found. The subconscious, being the black box that it is, finds a way to solve it for you. So, going back to the concluding portion of the equilateral triangle, if only the focus that you have is on success without looking at the two main inputs, which are your habits and time, it's going to be a skewed triangle. It won't be equilateral. If you're investing too much time in only managing time, not having clear goals, then you will not know how to form your habits. If you are a very, very, very habit focused person, but not clear in the goals that you have or in the time you have, you still have a skewed equilateral triangle. If you can look at this equilateral triangle going forward, and if you are a person doing the work of the incarnate master, the spiritual goal will automatically cover the goal of taking his message as well. By this time, if you are pinging on your another window on WhatsApp, you must have found out what my WhatsApp status is. If you have found that, you would understand that the majority of my time goes in the pursuit of spreading the message of happiness. And that for me is the definition for spiritual success. Long, long, long ago, I left any interest on knowing what my spiritual progress is, what my condition is, what my position is, what my approach is. Why bother about all that? I mean, I know consciously what I can do, and if I am good at doing that, what else would the master have but to give me the best? Why worry about it? If after all they are the most compassionate and generous, would I have to trade the love of my labor for a very stupid thing like 11th point, 12th point, merger with him, things like that? If he's really keen, it's up to him. As Daji always say, in a war with God, either way you are the winner. whether you lose or whether you win. And when you do his work, which is one of my spiritual, rather my only spiritual goal, my spiritual goal is not of consciously of progress, not of expansion, not of consciousness sort of growth, not of merger, not of anything else, though these are all things which are available. My only spiritual goal has been to take the message of what my masters have given to the nook and corner of what this world is, and if possible, beyond this as well. And in this process, I have found out that my material life has taken a very strong foundation. I never had, I wouldn't even say I've never had any issues in my life. I would say that rather that he has given so much internally that there's nothing that I can't manage in my life today. What would be the situation? You throw me at the deep end of any situation, I can sort of come out with only, I would say that knowledge that I have is that he is at the back and he's always guarding my rear. And of course, efforts is something that we need to do. With that clarity in mind, if you approach life, whatever be it, I'm not saying that this goal of mine has to be the goal for you as well, but whatever be the goal, if we jump into it fully, uh, success, habits, and time being managed, there's nothing that you cannot conquer either outside world or in the inside world. With that, I would put a short stop to this talk of mine and throw it open for question and answers if you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. If anyone has any questions, you can feel free to unmute yourself and you can feel free to ask any questions. It was quite intriguing for me. There were several takeaways. It all came in bullet speed, to be very frank.
Was it so slow?
Very slow. There was about aspiration and ambition and the need for us to, have an aspiration in life, about the three equilateral triangles, about success, habit, and time, and how critical they are, about the time of passing, and how everything that whatever we have done in life comes at that particular moment for us as a way of reflection. So it's extremely important for us to make use of every moment that we have to spend purposefully. So there was quite a lot, in the talk. Does anyone have any questions to ask? Please feel free if you have.
Yeah, it's not chargeable. Feel free.
No charge. It'll be nice if anyone has any questions to ask before we move to the sitting part of it.
Yeah, at least about 7 minutes before we have to start the sitting, 6:30, which is what I have set the time as. But I'm okay. I'm open to stretch either way.
But one thing, I have personally felt is
We have one raised hand. After you're done, Vishwa, you can
yeah,
close this.
one thing from what Prakash said that I will also reflect from my side is, initially I also had this thought that taking up to spiritual life, will we have enough time for material success? And so, do we rather not be giving more time to the material life? But honestly, from my life, when I were to reflect it, anything that I have gained from the spiritual life has really helped me with a better footing on the material life. That I have only become better because the character formation or the ability to handle the stress or ability to work in a multi-pronged way, all those things have only added to the efficacy of how we approach things. Yes, Jinting, you have a question, please feel free to go ahead and ask.
Yes, thank you, Brother Prakash. This is from Buffalo, New York Center. Thank you so much for that enlightening talk. I just have a very brief question. I work with college students in a university setting. I think your talk is not only relevant to all of us who practice heartfulness, but also for students who are on the journey to achieve their life goals as well. So thinking from their perspective, my question is about how does failure or challenge figure into that triangle that you talk about, success, habit, and time? Because when people are in the deep end of their life, it takes on a different configuration. I would assume or imagine that triangle would take on a different configuration to sometimes the balance is broken and how, I won't say anymore, but that was basically what I wanted to know for us, and but also for what I can bring back to my classroom to perhaps explain the idea to the students. Thank you.
I recall, maybe instead of giving a direct answer, I always like to quote from the masters. About 20 years back, there was a very interesting session that we had in IIT Madras. IIT Madras is one of the most top-notch technical institutions of India. And there, Charji was addressing the students we had taken in there for those days. We wouldn't call it U Connect or S Connect. It just happened that we had a professor who was also prefect, and he wanted Sri Parmananji, he was no more with us. He had wanted to take, and Charji was very happy to come. And the same question came up. People asked him, "What do you think about failure?" Charlie gave a very poignant answer at the time, which I thought I would recall and quote here. Said, don't take failure as something which is an end. He defined failure as the gap from the time that you start till you reach your goal. We unfortunately in this world, and if you really look at the definition what he gave, it completely normalizes the way in which we would approach life. In life, at the end of the day, we think we have to achieve something. These are artificial barriers the society has put on our head, that you must complete your kindergarten by the age of 3, you must have completed your first standard by the age of 6. And if you're not that, the stigma the society puts on your head is that you are a failure. If you look at the definition what Charji gave, failure is the gap between from the time you start till you finish. There are some people who run slow. There are some people who run fast. Nobody is going to run life the same speed at which uh, we would want them to run. Just because I was a gold medalist in my college, which I was, doesn't mean my daughter has to be the same. She can be better, she can be lower, she can be doing that at her own pace. If you look at some of the current educational curriculum which is emerging throughout the world, specifically in, if I understand, in Sweden and places like Finland, Singapore, these 3 countries I can surely say because I have studied a bit about how they offer. They don't put any artificial time limit by which a student will have to complete a particular schooling process. In fact, they don't even put dates by which you have to clear an exam. The rote system, as it's called, memory-based learning, which is nothing but throwing back into paper what you have learned, which is quite famous even today in India. The only way in which you're valued, what you are worth in this world, is by the academic so-called brilliance, which is nothing but your ability to recall what you have memorized in your school days. If I remember what is a plus b whole squared and reproduce a plus b whole squared, I am considered to be a brilliant student without even knowing how a plus b whole squared is practically used in life. And this, unfortunately, is it's not a problem with the students alone. It's a problem with the society in which the teachers, the schooling system, the political system, everyone is part of. So we are looking at a slow overall. I don't know how far Canada has adopted to the concept of Heartful Campus. Heartful Campus is an initiative in India where we are slowly working, which is an offering from Heartfulness Institute. Maybe you can ask the people from your side to explore this. Is when we take the focus away from just the need to memorize and recall, just the need to perform and stand at the top of your GPAs and other things, but look at life holistically. If you are a teacher assistant, you have a big moral responsibility to ensure that students are slowly brought into what we would call as the creative space of life. It has been found scientifically that people think better and perform better when they are not under stress. If I had told you in the beginning of the session, At the end, I'm going to ask you 25 questions, and if you're not answering these questions, you'll be demoted. How you would have listened to the session? You would have taken notes, you would have been highly stressed, you would have been maybe screaming at me internally. And at the end, you'll be wondering what these questions are, and my entire life, success or so-called failure depends on it. But when you bring joy into that and take the concept of failure from the point of view of time into eternity, I guess many of these issues are dissolved. If you look back at your own life, whatever your current age is, what is bothering you today is what happened yesterday, day before, 3 days ago. You don't remember what happened 5 years ago. But whenever it happened 5 years ago, at that moment, it was the most stressful period of your day. So if you really look at the complete spectrum of life, success and failure both are dualities. At some point of time, you'll transcend beyond this and then move to what I call as excellence. So, when the focus is on being what I call as excellence, even Charity once mentioned that perfection is only reserved for gods. Let's not humans worry about all that because we are not meant to be perfect. We are, of course, some people, who, as they would say, we have the vehicle inbuilt in us to become excellent. That is something that we should allow at least on a one-on-one conversation with students so that they don't feel the pressure of having to reach certain artificial goals in a fixed time. I hope this partly answers your question.
Yes, thank you so much, Rod.
And then we have one more question from Soumya. So basically what she's, yes, thank you very much for the session. We all have a problem with having negative or pessimistic thoughts. And so sometimes it affects us health-wise, or sometimes it gives rise to anxiety. So how do we stop worrying about something that may not even occur in life?
Let me go back to the old man's quote again, Chariji Maharaj. His famous quote was, worry is a misdirected thought. It's very simple. Worry is a misdirected thought. And we are always thinking about something going wrong. And if you look at the power of subconscious mind, what you continuously think about is what you attract. And that is also the basis of meditation. We all think about something and hoping that someday we cross the point of thinking and move into feeling, and from feeling we move into becoming, and from becoming we move into being. One I would say elixir that we all have is constant remembrance. In constant remembrance, even if you have a misdirected thought, there is a course correction that happens automatically. The way an ant is moving in the wall, and as an external person, you just guide it towards an exit by just putting your hands on either side. There is always an external hand that happens, at least in heartfulness practice, through constant remembrance. There is also another technique that Raji has given. Recently, all of us are familiar with this, is what we call a spot cleaning. Whenever you have a worry popping up, whenever you have a negative thought popping up, submit it at his feet and do a spot cleaning for a few minutes and fill yourself with the divine energy which is always available. I have done it several times whenever I have had chances of stress. These days, I'm more a cause of stress for others than myself causing stress to myself. Jokes apart. It is something, a technique which all of us can easily use. Heartfulness is full of so many techniques which are really efficacious and something that we should learn to use. Spot cleaning and with a firm prayer of submitting my worries to his feet, two things that can work and hand in hand to overcome any adverse situation.
Thank you, Anna. So it's around 9:04. Like,
Can move into sitting if there are no other questions.
so maybe if anyone has any more questions, you can either put it in the chat box, or probably you can unmute yourself and ask. If no one has any questions, then we can move into the sitting.
Yeah, maybe you can stop the recording and I'll say, please start. I'll mute myself. And whenever I'm done, I'll unmute and say that's all.
Mhm.
Is that